Hello everyone and welcome to Learning Lore. Today we're covering the events of Buried, what led to this western town getting stuck underneath a mining facility in Angola, and the end of the Victis storyline. This map was the third DLC Zombies map to come out for Black Ops 2, and it released on July 2nd, 2013. Just about 13 years ago, and back then, I barely knew anything about the lore of zombies. I was a filthy casual, as they say, and sure, I knew some things just from playing the game and completing the Easter eggs with friends, but growing this channel has taught me there is so much more to learn. So whether you're brand new to the zombie storyline and want to learn it alongside me, or if you've been following it the whole time and dedicated to learning it with each map that dropped, I hope you'll have me. On the last episode of Learning Lore, we left off with Mob of the Dead, fighting through Alcatraz with a new cast in a completely different dimension called Dimension 63. The sort of conclusion there, I think at least, is that Weasel broke free of the cycle after many tries, being stuck in this infinite loop, killing zombies and dying, but then eventually killing all three of his co-conspirators, breaking the cycle on that bridge and being set free. But our next map here is Buried, and it takes place in the dimension that we've been in all along. And once again, we continue the story of the Victis crew. So everything that happened last episode won't really affect this map, and we won't get to it until we cover Origins. But for now, it's 2035. So with that being said, the last map that actually does affect this one is Die Rise, which took place on October 22nd, 2035. And Victis successfully activated the second polarization device for Maxis, upon which doing so, the voices cease for some time, and Victis was left to wander the Earth. And to put this in perspective, Buried takes place on December 31st, 2035, the same year, just about 2 months into the future. So there really isn't a lot of distance between the events of Die Rise and the events of Buried, but during this time, they definitely did a lot of traveling, as Shanghai is quite far from Angola, Africa, which really makes you wonder if they've had any transportation. Maybe they somehow kept that bus with them this entire time. But lucky for us, in our intro cutscene, we do get to see some of this. And one of the most notable things happens right away. We see some cops fighting on top of a destroyed truck, which immediately tells us that there are more people alive than Victis. And of course, we have no idea how many people are left alive, but there's at least enough that Victis ran into some in their travels through Asia, and definitely seemed to have fought with them as well. Perhaps saving some people along the way, I'm not entirely sure. But we also get to see some pretty dystopian themes, like completely flooded towns and lots of destroyed infrastructure. But before we continue the conversation here about the intro cutscene, let's watch it in its entirety, because what's being said here is very important to the storyline.
Enough walking for today. We set up camp here. In case you boneheads have forgotten, the world is broken. Very broken. The dead walk the earth, and what remains of civilization is at the mercy of forces we barely understand.
What makes you think we're gonna find something different at this new place?
I don't know that we will, but at least we'll be sure.
Sure of what, exactly?
I don't know.
His memory's going again.
Your name is Russman. Russ Man.
That my first or last name?
We don't know. You're just Russman. Yeah, anyway, you're a former operative from Broken Arrow. You've been walking the Earth since the, incident.
Yeah. I think I remember. The town.
That's right.
That's where you found us!
When we met, you already had your lapdog in tow.
What do you mean, lapdog, huh? I'm the only one who knows what to do!
Don't talk stupid, Stu. All you know is whatever the German tells you to think.
I don't think you're in any position to ridicule Mr. Stulinger, particularly given your own proclivities.
You better watch your mouth before you say something you regret, boy.
Enough! We need to remember why we're here. We've all been jumping through hoops for reasons we don't fully understand.
Fully understand?
All right, for reasons we don't understand at all. Point is, we do it. We keep moving we keep fighting. It's what we do, day in, day out. If you really need a reason why we do this, I'll give you one. We do it because doing something, anything, is better than doing nothing.
The rift is less than one day's travel. We move at dawn.
What if we don't find answers?
Then we'll just have to ask more questions.
The first thing I want to mention here is it's very clear that Russman is getting worse. He's losing his memory, and it's fading fast. We knew that this was already the case in transit, even. Starting off, he was already having some memory issues, but he was still there mostly. And here in the intro cutscene, he's completely forgetting why they are there at all. What his name even is, for instance, which he definitely didn't have a problem in transit, as almost every single one of his quotes was about Russman doing something awesome. And actually, maybe that's why he talked to himself in the third person, so he could remember his name. But even though this memory has faded from him, he does seem to know that there's something important about where they're heading, and that it will give them some insight on what has happened and what they're supposed to do. Which is very strange, because this rift is set in a very desolate area in northern Africa. It's my best guess the way that he knows about it is because of his time at Broken Arrow, which did disband very shortly after those missiles hit the Earth. But I suppose if the organization was there when the missiles did land, Russman could know about it, even through his dwindling memory, which might hint at this rift they're going to being the location of where one of the rockets hit the Earth. And during this time, the crew reminds Russman what his name is, and also that he was part of Broken Arrow, that they met in a town, which of course is Transit, and he already had Stulinger with him. This is something we covered in the Learning Lore episode for Transit, that Russman and Stulinger definitely met before they ended up getting together with the other two. But here in this intro, it seems to narrow down that they met in town. And actually in this video, it looks a lot like that main intersection of the map, which I guess is a pretty interesting conclusion to draw. And then right down the road, of course, we started the events of Transit at the bus station. But other than their travels across Asia and all of the death and destruction that they witnessed, this entire cutscene takes place with them talking around a campfire next to a destroyed plane in what looks like some sort of scrapyard. It's not exactly obvious where this scrapyard would be, but we do know that it is less than one day from the rift, because at the end of the cutscene, Russman says that's where they're going, and they see it in the distance before it fades to black. And before we let our characters get there and talk about the events of Buried, I think it's important to talk about the map itself and how it got there. Because of course, when playing the map, it's very clearly a Western town. It actually kind of feels a lot like America, but yet here it is in Angola, Africa, underneath the ground, buried away, hidden for God knows how long. And while I don't know if we're going to get a full picture today, because I think there's some lore from Black Ops 3 that's going to help out a lot with understanding what's going on here, we do have one entry in the Chronorium from October 13th, 2025, just after the events of Nuketown, that says the Earth fracturing triggers further temporal rifts, teleporting an 1800s American Western town underneath a mining facility in Angola. It also says some stuff about Arthur here, but that lore is from Black Ops 3, so we'll be talking about that in the future. The important takeaway, though, from it is that Arthur arrives at this American Western town at the same time that it gets teleported to Angola. I think the most impactful part of this Chronorium entry is when it takes place, on October 13th. And of course, that is the day that those missiles were fired from the moon. That our characters, Dempsey, Nikolai, Takio, and Samantha in Richtofen's body destroyed the Earth and set up this Victis timeline that we're on now. So during that massive explosion that was most likely infused with 115 and created all of these temporal rifts and fractured the Earth, somehow this American Western town from the 1800s was teleported across the Earth to Angola. And the Chronorium also says that it's an 1800s town, but the map is also called Resolution 1295. I don't know what the 1295 is about. I guess it's not the date that this town is from. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense for it to be. Obviously, the American West did not exist in 1295. That was long before Christopher Colombo and all the other explorers found America. So I'm actually very unsure what this resolution is about, and perhaps we'll learn more in the future. But for now, there is a little bit more lore to learn about this Western town. First of all, I suppose we should talk about where it got teleported to. Clearly a mine. I mean, not only can we immediately tell this spawning in the map, seeing these conveyor belts move material around, we can also see it down beneath, with these mine shafts that have signs around and seem to have different names. And with a quick Google search of the mining industry in Angola, we can see that most of it is actually diamond mining, which it seems that this mining, at least as we know it today, began in 1912, when gems were discovered in a stream in the Lunda region in the northeast, and in 1917 a company called Demang was granted concession for diamond mining and prospecting. It's probably safe to say that this is what this mining facility was, a diamond mine. And although I'm definitely unsure which mine it is, as there are many in Angola, looking through some images on the internet, we can get some pretty cool views of these mines that look a lot like what we see outside the map in Buried. And although on Buried it is sort of part of the skybox and it's not exactly super obvious, we do have the alpha version of Buried where it was constructed with geometry and sort of had this same kind of spiral road leading down to the bottom, like many mines do, I suppose. I should also probably mention that although diamonds seem to be the main export from Angola mines, there are also others. The biggest of which being iron ore, but there are others as well, which if you want to read through this list, it's right there on your screen now. So, okay, the story currently is that this 1800s American western town got teleported through a rift that was created from the missiles that struck Earth, creating massive temporal disturbances and fracturing the Earth. And it was teleported to a diamond mine in Angola in a completely different time. But what about this 1800s town? What happened in it before all of this began, before it was teleported? Why did it specifically get included in this temporal rift? I mean, we know typically these things happen for a reason. Or at least it seems like that so far in the zombie storyline, and sure enough, Buried is no exception. A lot of this information we're going to be getting from a cut Pack-a-Punch song, or at least a full version of a Pack-a-Punch song that we never really got. I mean, we have the Pack-a-Punch jingle, of course, which is a part of the song, but this is a much larger version, and it's also copyright, so if it sounds a little bit weird, I'm sorry about that. We did the best we could to make sure that this video doesn't get demonetized, but let's have a listen to that right now.
Here, there, seems like everywhere, nasty things are happening, and now everyone is scared. Old Jeb Brown the blacksmith, he saw his mother die. A critter took a bite from her and now she's in the sky. The angels came down to old Jeb and told him what to do. Build yourself a great machine, its punch will see you through. When you pack a punch, the whole damn bunch will not last very long. And while you put yourself to work, sing a country western song.
Now, Jeb didn't know much about engineering, so he just put his trust in the angels and set to work. After many days and many nights, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and a little help from the angels, of course, he was ready to show his machine to the whole damn town.
Friends, neighbors, ladies, gentlemen, if you're feeling underpowered, I'll help you make amends. Stick your weapon in the slot and let it change your luck. Few things in life are guaranteed, but I promise this won't suck. Punch your fists into the air and raise a rebel yell. There's lots of bad uns out there you need to send to hell. With Pack-a-Punch, I have a hunch your problems will be gone. But if you end up on the ground, sing a country western song. Pack-a-Punch.
What you just heard is not the full version of this song, but it's the part of the song that's interesting for the storyline. We hear it immediately talk about old Jeb Brown the blacksmith seeing his mother die. Some creature took a bite from her, and now she's in the sky. Which it's not immediately obvious what creature this is talking about. I mean, we're in the zombies storyline, right? So immediately our mind goes to zombies. But there's not really a reason for that. Like, back in the 1800s, we don't know about any zombie outbreak that happened back then. I mean, as far as we know currently in this timeline, the first zombie outbreak happened towards the end of World War II. So what the heck was happening back in the early 1800s in America? This creature could be something else entirely. It could be something sort of paranormal in nature, maybe? But what we do know for sure is that Jeb the blacksmith's mother died. And I guess during this grieving and anger, the angels came down to old Jeb and told him what to do. They told him how to build the Pack-a-Punch. And it definitely seems like he listened. This, of course, brings about a lot of questions. I mean, first of all, who are these angels? Like, is this somehow connected to some of the really early events in the zombies timeline that we haven't covered yet, of course, because Origins, I suppose, really starts that story, so we'll talk about that soon. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, though. I mean, it seems kind of strange. These angels sound very paranormal, and we haven't had really any of that in the zombie storyline so far. It could be whoever is in the NPD at this time, as of course the NPDs are around Earth, and I mean, I guess they could be working at the moment, I'm not entirely sure. It seems at least though that in the 1800s, the humans on Earth didn't know about them, so they could have been functioning, but maybe functioning by some ancient hand. Or, of course, it could be completely dislocated from the MPD storyline. It could be something far different. I really don't know. But of course, we do know that this is the start of the Pack-a-Punch. There was no Pack-a-Punch before the 1800s in America. And of course, it was made by old Jeb Brown the blacksmith. And on Buried, we do have a gunsmith. And it's my best guess that this was the blacksmith that's being talked about. But lastly, who is Jeb Brown's mother? Is she important to the storyline at all? I mean, I immediately want to say the witch in the witch's house, those ghosts that take your money and steal your soul away, are Jeb Brown's mother. But there's really no way to tell. My understanding is that currently the zombies community is pretty set on that being the case, though. And there's some additional lore as well, even about it, that I have no idea how anyone knows about, in all honesty. So for now, we'll put that to the side, and perhaps in the future, I'll make another video appending it. But from this Pack-a-Punch song, the big takeaway is that Buried is where the Pack-a-Punch was created, and can of course immediately lead us to conclude that that's why it was teleported through this rift. But we had the Pack-a-Punch all the way back in the 1940s. The first map we had it on was Doris, which clearly took place way before 2025. So what does this mean exactly? I guess the Pack-a-Punch was teleported somehow through a rift before this? Maybe a rift that was created through the testing that 935 was doing back then. Or perhaps it was teleported back in time, which we have seen happen I think only once so far in the storyline, and that's with Shangri-La, where during these eclipse sequences it seems that our characters are thrusted back in time, to perhaps a time actually that Shangri-La was on Mars. So I suppose that could very well be the case. Maybe this temporal rift that happened in 2025 didn't necessarily bring the Pack-a-Punch with it, and instead brought the Pack-a-Punch to an entirely different place, 1940s Germany. And as we go map to map, it teleports with us, along with the perks. Whoever is sort of controlling the strings here seems to be bringing them along with us to help us along our way. So that covers the Pack-a-Punch, it covers this town being teleported, and it covers what our characters have been up to since the events of Die Rise. But I suppose it is important to note that this town got teleported in 2025, which means it's been around here underneath the ground of Angola for roughly 10 years. And of course, there are many mechanics in Buried that make this 10-year gap quite interesting. But let's start off with a pretty simple one. First of all, the chalk drawings, which can all be found in one location on Buried, a new mechanic entirely, where we can pick up the chalk drawings and draw our own wall guns. But all of them are in the gunsmith's place instead of being around the map, which of course makes a lot of sense that the gunsmith would have all the guns. But if my Pack-a-Punch song theory is correct and this is Jeb Brown's gunsmith, well, it's Jeb Brown that has all the guns, which is even more impactful, I think. I mean, is there a reason he has all the guns, though? I mean, other than him being a gunsmith, I don't really know. It definitely seems that the chalk drawings, the perk machines, and the Pack-a-Punch, like I already mentioned, are being controlled by something else. Controlled by something that we won't get to until later on in the storyline, so I suppose for now, whatever is controlling it just decided to put them all in the gunsmith for storytelling purposes, maybe. And although I don't think it's all that important to note, there are a couple of weapons that aren't inside the gunsmith. But this mechanic is quite interesting. It's one that I've really liked, and I always wanted it to come back. It never has, but it is a really cool mechanic, and it also sets up a little bit more lore for the wall buys, that they're drawn by this magic chalk. And whenever you make that outline, even if it's not perfect, it seems to know what gun that chalk is for. And to be even more specific, it seems that there is a different magic chalk for each one of the weapons. Which, funny enough, development-wise, that's exactly what's going on as well. But lore-wise, whoever is creating these magic chalks has to create one for each one of the weapons. The next thing I want to talk about on our list of mechanics lore, if you want to call it that, is the Witch's House. Which, by the way, I've been calling it the Witch's House, like, forever, and I don't know if that's actually the proper term. From my research that I've found online, it seems that most people just call them ghosts and not witches. And it's kind of funny, I don't think anyone has corrected me on that either in the comment section, so please let me know down below what you guys call it. But for now, I'm going to keep calling it that, because that's what I've always done, and of course, there is the big question of who the hell is she? And like I said before, it could very well be the case that she's the blacksmith's mother. But when you get up close and personal with her, she looks very young, and that wouldn't make a lot of sense for a gunsmith to be like, I mean, at most like 13 years old. I mean, this woman looks like she's in her 20s. But I suppose what's also important to note about her is that she has this sort of purplish hue around her. A lot like the Shadow Man in Black Ops 3, but that's for another time, of course. So maybe it has something to do with that stuff. I'm not sure, but very clearly she's young, she's crying as well. I mean, she's very distraught if you look at her face. And she can duplicate and make multiple versions of herself. She also steals your life away, literally takes your soul from you along with your points. And I suppose the points could kind of be tied to your soul in a way, because that's sort of what's happening in zombies, actually, if you think about it. And I guess a great question is, why does she do that? Why does she need your soul? Is she dying? Does she actually need your life to live? Or is this just what she wants to do to keep you out of her house? I'm sort of much closer to the latter, because again, as I said before I started this section of the video, Buried has been underneath Angola for 10 years, and I mean, most likely no one has gone to visit it. Maybe a couple people have, I don't know. And if that's the case, and the witch needed organic life to live, well, she'd probably be long gone by now. So it's my best guess that she simply does it to defend her house, and that this house was originally hers before she died. Inside of it, we can see many family photos as well, and it would make a lot of sense that this is her inside of it with the rest of her family. So also, I suppose, does that mean that Jeb Brown the blacksmith is in here too? I mean, it would make a lot of sense. And inside the blacksmith, we can find this same picture. And as far as I know, those are the only two locations that it exists. But moving further here, this protective witch that clearly doesn't want anyone in their house and even whispers at you to tell you to go away, she drops a great reward when you kill her. When you make it through this house and you take out all of her clones, she drops a free perk, which this map does not have a max ammo round, which we have had traditionally on every other map. So whoever controls those max ammo type rounds, which usually is the person in the MPD, at least that's been my impression, because every single time it's a
fetch me their swords.
It seems like the MPD is controlling them. But here on Buried, we don't have one. So maybe Richtofen, which is in the MPD at the moment, doesn't want to do it, or because of the witches, he can't do it. And the witches are sort of replacing them, and whoever is pulling those strings once again might be controlling the witches. Might have something to do with it. Maybe that purplish glow we see on them is the first of that leaking into the storyline. But it's hard to tell at this point, and we'll have to draw more conclusions in the future. But whoever the witch is, one thing we do know is she can play the piano quite well. There is a side Easter egg in this map, the first I think we've had. Has there been another side Easter egg? I mean, there's been obviously like song Easter eggs and stuff, but I think this is the first like functional side Easter egg, where if you shoot a ballistic knife at this target in the saloon and then run your way back through the witch's house, there's a piano in it where the witch will be playing. You can't kill this witch. It doesn't seem like you can stop her from playing the piano in any kind of way. She's absolutely invulnerable. But what you can do is tip her by pressing the interact button and giving her some of your points, the points that she seems to keep stealing from you. So maybe it is points that she's after all along, actually. But either way, when you do this, the piano back in the saloon becomes playable, and it seems somehow these two pianos are connected. Perhaps spiritually, and maybe, just maybe, this witch here in the house was the one who would normally play the piano in the saloon. Perhaps that was her job. Maybe she was a pianist. Get your mind out of the gutter. And lastly, one of our big mechanics here is Arthur, the big man, that a lot of people called Leroy back in the day, me included, I think because of the whole Leroy Jenkins thing, right? That's sort of the name we gave him colloquially. But as far as the Chronorium is concerned, and I suppose Treyarch is concerned, his name is Arthur. Or the big man, if you want to go by Misty. He is very clearly in a jail cell the first time that we find him, and as we know, this town here got teleported 10 years ago, so I guess he was in a jail cell for 10 years? And judging by the state of things, he is the only person left alive from that teleportation. Or maybe people didn't die from the teleportation, maybe others were teleported too, but if they were, they're definitely dead. I mean, they're all zombies now, because the zombies on the map very clearly are people from this western town. I guess the teleportation put him in jail, although I suppose it could be the case that he was put in jail by whoever was still alive in this town. Maybe they thought he was crazy. I mean, he's huge, so there's that. They could have been scared of him. But he also could have done something bad. Or maybe because this town teleported and he teleported to it as well, they thought that he was responsible for it. They thought that he was sort of the reason the world just ended for them, essentially. Like, that is crazy. Like, think about being in a western town, going about your life, like there's some crazy stuff going on, a little bit of paranormal stuff, some dude's building some crazy contraption, there's these creatures that are biting people and killing them, and then boom, all of a sudden, your entire world gets split, you're in a place you don't know, it's dark, you're underneath the ground, and there's a big man there. I would probably put the guy in jail too. But no matter how he ended up in jail, this tells us that he doesn't need food, because he'd be dead. He would for sure be dead by now. Although in his jail cell, it does seem like he has a plate there, like they did feed him. Or maybe there was food left around. I mean, it could also be the case, like I said before, that he just got teleported here and there was no one left but him, and he's been in this for 10 years alone. That's very possible. But what is in the jail cell that we can interact with is the booze. The guy clearly likes it. So he doesn't need food, he doesn't need water, but he sure loves himself some booze, and he also loves himself some candy. Pretty weird, but hey man, if that's your food and water, booze and candy, and somehow he's still like this large, muscular guy and not some like slob or something, it's pretty impressive. And on top of that, I suppose, also, the zombies ignore him. Right? They don't kill him, they don't hit him, they don't scratch him, they don't scare him even, actually. He seems to be completely impervious to them. He can quite literally pick up a crawler and just carry him around like a baby. So that's pretty huge. I mean, we have not had that happen yet, except for characters like George Romero, who we know are sort of zombies themselves. Right? They died and came back to life. So maybe that's what happened with Arthur too. Maybe he is sort of part zombie in a way. But he definitely doesn't look like one. He definitely looks alive. So maybe it's not necessarily that he's a zombie, but whatever the zombies have, he also has a bit of it. Perhaps the thing that made him this massive giant was Element 115, was the same thing that make humans into the undead. But either way, he's definitely a simple man. Just booze and candy pleases him, and makes him do work for you as well, and he seems quite content in doing so. When you give him candy next to a crafting table, he knows what to build, and he'll go do it. He also knows how to draw the wall guns as well, so he can do that too. And he even does things like stopping the box from moving, which is something we have not seen ever before. So he is somehow powerful enough to stop whatever the thing is that's controlling zombies. Whatever the thing is that places the wall guns, whatever the thing is that moves the mystery box, which could be the MPD. I mean, we hear Richtofen laugh at us every time it moves while he's in control, but it could still be the case that it's not him that's moving the box itself, and he's just laughing at our demise. But clearly, Arthur is quite powerful, actually, if you think about it. He's invulnerable, he doesn't need food and water, and he can stop the magic. He can interrupt the person pulling the strings. But like I said before, sort of the what and how he got to buried in the first place can't be fully answered until Black Ops 3. Specifically, to Reisendrache. So if that video's out right now, perhaps you want to go watch it. But it won't be out for a while, probably. I'm sorry. And finally, that brings us to Buried. Our characters have walked through the deserts past the pyramids as we see in that intro cutscene and have made it to this mining facility in Angola that is right on the edge of a massive rift. A rift that is the largest that we have seen so far in zombies by far. And Russman led Victis to it, saying that it will answer some questions of theirs, and Misty stating that it's better to do something than nothing at all. And immediately when Victis arrive at this broken down mining facility that's been completely abandoned, after not hearing him for months at a time during this journey from Dire Eyes to Buried, Maxis begins talking to them. through what I'm assuming is this machine right here. I mean, obviously we know that Maxis can talk through electronics at this point, although this doesn't really seem like electronics to me. But I suppose there is some sort of generator attached to it, so I guess it makes sense.
Attention, my corporeal friends. You can hear me, yes? Our journey inches ever closer to its conclusion. This location represents the final piece of a puzzle beyond the comprehension of your mortal minds. With your help, we will heal the Earth. Energy from the ether is at its strongest this close to the rift. You must harness this energy in order to power the tower seen from this vantage point. In order to achieve our goal, you must venture beneath the surface. I will endeavor to monitor and advise on your progress. But you must remain vigilant. Richtofen will stop at nothing to achieve his psychotic goals.
And in this transmission, Maxis says that their journey inches closer to its conclusion, and that this location represents the final piece of the puzzle, a puzzle that's beyond the comprehension of our mortal minds. He states that with our help, we'll be able to heal the Earth, and that the energy from the ether is strongest close to this rift, which I suppose makes a lot of sense. I mean, the rift is massive. He tells us that once again, we need to harness this energy in order to power the tower seen from this vantage point. And in order to achieve our goal, we have to venture beneath the surface. So it seems that Russman was correct, and heading to this rift is going to answer some of Victis' questions. Whether that's for good or bad, of course, we'll be finding out soon. But either way, with Maxis talking to them again, it seems whatever bit of information was still stuck in Russman's head was correct. And before we continue to the events of Buried, I'm gonna take a sip of the coffee, because of course, I have my coffee with me here this morning. I hope wherever you are, whatever time you're watching this, you're enjoying yourself, because I do love myself some Buried. And although I've never really understood the lore of this map, and of course that's what the series is for, I have always enjoyed the gameplay. I mean, simple things like being able to keep the box at its original location, to having the wall guns as chalk that actually give you money when you draw them. I've always felt that this map was just about being absolutely overpowered, and it was a ton of fun, to be honest with you. And before we continue, there are a few people to thank. First of all, the makers of the Chronorium, which I do have the link to this website in the description, but there's an interactive book here which makes learning the lore of zombies so much better. It's absolutely awesome, so thank you to all of these people on your screen right now. And secondly, I want to give a big thank you to Jay Bleezy, the maker of the Black Ops 2 Reimagined mod. It is what is allowing us to do these Easter eggs solo, and thus making it actually possible for me to just no-clip around here without having to have somebody help me out. But on top of that, this Reimagined mod changes so much about the game. Like some maps, for instance, Buried here, is completely different from the vanilla version. So if you're looking for a little bit of a refresh, I definitely recommend you download it from the link in the description. But I suppose it's time for us to finally listen to Maxis and hop on down below.
Woo! Took a bit of a tumble there.
My communications are more fractured below ground. It is essential that you find the parts needed to complete a structure capable of delivering power to the tower above ground.
And immediately when we do so, we hear Maxis once again. This time, he's telling us that his communications are fractured below ground, which makes you think we won't be hearing a lot of him, but of course, we'll find very shortly that that's not the case. But once again, he states that we need to power the tower. And lucky for us, we get our first hint of how to do that when we go up to the courthouse and find the Gallows.
Great! These gallows are positioned in the optimum location. Find the necessary parts and bring them here.
Apparently, these gallows are in the optimal location, whatever that means exactly. And we need to find the correct parts and build it. Just in case its location is important somehow, I'm going to show you exactly where it is. So going up directly above it here, I mean, it's a decent bit from spawn. It's quite literally just below this rock. So I don't think its location is that important, but Maxis certainly seems to think it is. I guess it's beyond our mortal comprehension. But as we know in both Transit and Die Rise, Stulinger usually has Richtofen in his head. And just like with Maxis, it seems that Richtofen hasn't been talking to him for quite a long time. But after Victis arrived at Buried, they heard Maxis once again, and shortly afterwards, Stulinger started hearing Richtofen.
Samuel? Samuel Stulinger?
What? Oh no, not again!
Calm yourself, Samuel. We're all friends here, are we not?
Not really. Me and Russman are buddies, but, I hate that girl with a passion.
We have no time for such petty rivalries, my friend. I fear that Maxis may manipulate your companions into following his orders. He can be a very convincing liar. I know this firsthand. For now, you must focus on only gaining control of the tower above ground. It is more important than you can possibly imagine.
So, no pressure then?
The components necessary to build an energy conduit to power the tower can all be sourced from this location. When you find them, you must ensure that they are not used to help Maxis.
And once again, it's a very familiar story. And this time, there's sort of a little bit of lore about the relationship between our four characters that Samuel gives us. Here we heard that he is friends with Russman, and as he says, they're buddies, but he hates the girl with a passion. He is definitely not a fan of Misty, like the rest of the zombies community is. And this is something you could definitely tell beforehand, just from like the sort of quotes that happen throughout the game. Like, it definitely seems like Russman and Stulinger are friends, and Misty and Marlton are friends. But there definitely seems to be some sort of line between them, like Russman and Stulinger don't seem to be huge fans of Misty and Marlton. But in the last part of this quote that Richtofen gives us, he says that the components necessary to build an energy conduit to power the tower can all be sourced from this location, and when Stulinger finds them, he must ensure that they're not used to help Maxis. For this first step of building the Guillotine or the Gallows, a lot of the parts are actually all in one location here, just hidden sort of near the Gunsmith, but in an alleyway. I'm not sure if that has any significance, but it is right next to Jeb's Gunsmith, so perhaps he was gathering these parts ahead of time. Once again, told by those angels that were talking to him. And on top of this, these parts are shared between the Richtofen and Maxis side. So it's impossible for Victis to build both. And although I suppose it's possible for Victis to dismantle one of them and decide partway through, let's go with Richtofen instead, or vice versa, it is impossible for the player to do this. Unlike the other maps where there was sort of a few steps that were the same between Richtofen and Maxis, immediately we are forced to decide which path we want to take. And during the process of putting different parts on the Gallows, Maxis has a very interesting voice line.
The structure is almost complete. You are brave warriors, my friends. Perhaps braver than those who walked this road before you.
He compliments us and says that we're brave warriors, perhaps braver than those who walked this road before you. Now, Maxis could be talking about anyone here. Obviously, Buried has existed for about 10 years. But as I said before, all of the parts for the Guillotine and the Gallows are found in that alleyway next to the Gunsmith. So it really makes me think he's talking about Jeb here, although there's not any extra evidence of this. But either way, after you fully build the Gallows, you can move on to the next step.
I am pleased to see that Richtofen has not diverted you from our mutual goal.
And during Victis' troubles in fighting off the zombies, eventually they'll find these red orbs scattered around the map.
These devices, embedded in the earth, they amplify and project energy. You cannot allow Richtofen to exploit their power. For them to be destroyed, you must find a device capable of projecting a powerful sonic blast.
And when they do, Maxis tells them that they need to be destroyed, and Richtofen needs them. So it's very important that we find some powerful device capable of making a sonic blast to do so. And sure enough, just like Maxis has the Gallows, Richtofen has the Guillotine. And when Stulinger walks up to it, Richtofen talks to him once again.
Perfect! Und Guillotine! Find and bring the parts to this location. Together we will thwart Maxis. Don't worry, we don't actually need to cut off his head. I was talking metaphorically. Although decapitations can follow if time permits.
The story read away is seeming very familiar. Once again, the goals of Richtofen and Maxis are at odds with each other. And funny enough, he also says in this quote that we don't actually need to cut off Maxis' head, which I suppose is something that is worth noting. Like, we're using the Guillotine and the Gallows. These are typically two devices that are used to unalive people. But here in this Easter egg, we're definitely not using it to do that. We're using them instead as energy conduits to power this polarization device that's above ground. But after Stulinger finds all these parts, or somehow convinces Victis to work with him instead of Maxis, he can then build the Guillotine and start his path in helping Richtofen.
Wunderbar! You have done so well, but we are not finished yet. Listen for my helpful advice. I can only apologize if it seems cryptic. I cannot see so well from here.
Here, Richtofen says that he apologizes if his advice seems cryptic. He cannot see so well from here. But Richtofen currently is in the MPD on the moon, right? He's sort of in control of the ether, but doesn't have full control over the Earth. Maxis stopped that at the end of the moon Easter egg. So he's in this world where he has partial control, and I guess partial vision as well. I mean, I've never really thought about it before, but how does Richtofen know what you're doing? And I suppose the same could be said about Maxis. I mean, Maxis is like this AI being, almost in a way, right? He's fused with electronics. And that's the only way he can communicate with us, and I would imagine whatever electronics are around, he could use those sensors as well to know that we're there, but it's not exactly obvious how that all works. And it's also definitely not obvious how Richtofen knows where we are. I mean, you could say like, okay, he's in the MPD, so maybe he can just see everything. Maybe he can see through the zombie's eyes, things of that nature. But yet here he says that he cannot see so well. So maybe there's something about Buried that's sort of limiting his power even further, making it even harder for him to interact with the physical world. But as Max has said about those red orbs, Richtofen definitely needs them. And instead of finding a device to break them, it seems like we need to find a device to power them up. Because when Stulinger walks up to one, we hear this.
Oh, look! Just what we're looking for. Well, almost. They need a little more oomph before they will serve our needs. Find the right tool, Samuel, but do it quickly. Your allies may yet choose to follow Maxis.
So although building the Gallows or the Guillotine is when the player gets to decide which path they take, this right here is when Victis is forced to decide. We either power these orbs for Richtofen, or we destroy them for Maxis. Luckily for Victis, though, inside the general store, there are quite a few parts that will help them. And of course, on top of that, they also have the big man, Arthur, who's in his jail cell, that I'm sure they'll find rather quickly and be able to release him. And after a little bit of experimenting with candy and booze, he may be able to assist Victis in building this resonator, as well as assist them in navigating the map and getting past these large walls of debris. But what Victis needs for this step is something called the subsurface resonator. And normally it needs to be powered by the turbine, but again, here in Black Ops 2 Reimagine, this is made much easier. Which I suppose also makes this thing way more powerful as well. Kinda crazy, actually.
You are both imaginative and ingenious.
Guessing I may need this thing after all.
But there are 4 of these orbs around the map, one that we just broke there by the candy shop, and another one right here near the church.
This here for now.
Continue to find and destroy each amplifier.
And another one here inside the mining tunnels that is right above the general store.
This here for now.
Do not allow your pace to falter. There is still much to do.
But the final one is behind the witch's house. So in order to complete this step, Victis must have released Arthur, and have used him as well to open up the pathway. And they also need to go through the witch's house with some weaponry that will hopefully help them. Which, no pun intended, this is probably the creepiest thing that's been added to zombies to date. Immediately when entering, Victis is swarmed by these witches. Clones of the same woman, the lady of the house. And one by one, making it all the way through until they get out the other side. And after doing so, they do get quite a good reward. And while Victis is behind the witch's house here, they'll find that there is a massive maze. And if they do choose this to be the time to explore it, well, it's rather dangerous, of course. But eventually they'll make it to the other side where Stamina Up is, as well as the Pack-a-Punch. And this might be a good time for them to upgrade their gear. And since the Pack-a-Punch was made here in Buried, although quite a bit before this western town got teleported here to Africa, it could be the case that this is where the Pack-a-Punch was kept, hidden away underneath this vestibule. But also, at the same time, that might not be the case, as of course the Pack-a-Punch has followed us everywhere we go, so it could just be teleported anywhere. So maybe the location isn't super significant. But what is significant is also in the backyard of the witch's house, is our final red orb.
I am most pleased to see that the amplifiers are destroyed.
And after we do so, we get another quote from Maxis.
You must capture the wayward spirit of the lantern. Its power is key to achieving our mission. Brute force may be required to bring it within reach.
He says he's pleased with us for destroying these amplifiers, but then after it, says that we need to capture the wayward spirit of the lantern. Its power is key to achieving our mission. Brute force may be required to bring it within reach. But for the Richtofen side of things, we need something to power up these red orbs instead of destroy them, so the subsurface resonator isn't going to do. Turns out that Stulinger has to go to the box and find himself the paralyzer. Which I suppose it's probably a good time to talk about this wonder weapon. It's one of the cooler ones in my opinion. I really love this. It's like some sort of anti-gravity device. I mean, for one, it can literally lift the player off the ground. And then, of course, its second function is slowing down the zombies, essentially paralyzing them. I mean, it could take a super sprinter and turn it into a walker. And over time, if you keep using it on the same zombie, it will kill them. And immediately when looking at the weapon itself, I mean, it looks really strange. It definitely doesn't look like something Group 935 made. It almost seems out of this world, like alien in nature. And I don't know if there is an answer to this, but my best guess at the moment is maybe Jeb made this gun. Maybe just like with the Pack-a-Punch, where some voices told him how to build that, some voices also told him how to build the Paralyzer. I mean, it would only make sense if he's a blacksmith or gunsmith that he could make something like this if given the correct instructions. But when you look towards the end of the gun, you can see this sort of white power source. Maybe it's powered by 115, I mean, that would make sense. Pretty much all of the wonder weapons we've seen before us have been. So there's no real reason to assume that this one isn't, but there could also be something more going on here. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, the white light has typically meant souls so far in zombies, at least up to this point, so maybe there's a soul trapped inside the gun. But around that little capsule, there's also these spinning metallic circles, and they spin around really fast as you use the weapon. It definitely seems like this is supposed to be our anti-gravity device, and that it, combined with the claws on the end, somehow make it function and do the different things that it does. And another really cool thing about this gun is it doesn't run out of ammo. There is no ammo to it, actually. It simply runs on energy, I suppose, and it will overheat over time. It has a counter on the top of it that goes all the way up to 115, funny enough. And when it hits that number, it needs some time to cool down. Really cool wonder weapon. I love it. Although it's not the most useful in killing zombies, I think when it's combined with other players next to you shooting them, it works really well as sort of like a camp location gun, if that makes any sense. And it's a lot of fun to use. But as far as Stulinger's purpose for it, he needs to use it on these red orbs. And when he starts using it on one of these red orbs, we can see that reddish nature go away and start to turn white. And we get some voice lines from Richtofen telling Stulinger that he's on the right path.
Ooh, look at that! That's perfect! It's bigger and better! Find the others! Repeat the process!
And after powering up the fourth orb, we get a really weird voice line.
There should be a little light floating around. Perhaps some poltergeist resided within.
It seems that Richtofen is talking about the same lantern that Maxis does after completing the orb step. Except on this side of the Easter egg, we get a little bit extra information. He says that there should be a little light floating around, which of course is the lantern, but also says some poltergeists might be resided within. Which definitely leads me to believe that this lantern has some kind of soul in it. Perhaps the soul of the witch? The lady of the house? I'm not entirely sure. And that brings us to our third step of the Easter egg. And using a little bit of no-clip here, if we go underneath the witch's house, we could find this lantern right away. It's glowing purple and it's stored right down here. But of course, it's not that easy for Victis, is it? Instead, this purple lantern starts floating through the sky. And Victis needs to hit it with a grenade in order to knock it to the ground. Which, to be fair, isn't all that difficult to do.
Now you must secure the lantern to ensure that it is not used to advance Richtofen's plans.
Guess no one else wants it.
And after doing so, Maxis will tell us to pick it up so that we can stop Richtofen's plans. Which, as for Richtofen, this lantern step actually is a little bit different. After powering up those orbs, this lantern starts floating around the map, just like it did for Maxis, except it doesn't disappear. It travels a much longer path around the entire map. Which is sort of strange. Somehow, powering up these red orbs changed the nature of the lantern itself. If you destroy the orbs, this lantern just sort of dissipates. It can't really stay in this reality for very long. But if you power up the orbs, this lantern seems to be much more powerful. It has the ability to just float around the map and have its merry way. And I'm not sure what that exactly implies, but it is kind of interesting. Perhaps it applies to the nature of what's in the lantern? Maybe it's something different for the Maxis and Richtofen side, I don't know. But either way, how Victis obtains that lantern is the same for both sides of the Easter egg. You just throw a grenade, knock it out of the sky, and pick it up.
Here comes the lantern. I'm sure it is harmless enough.
Huh. I should probably hang on to this.
Departed souls leave residual energy in their wake. This energy must be used to fuel the lantern.
Richtofen says that departed souls leave residual energy in their wake, and that energy needs to be used to fuel the lantern. So it definitely seems that Richtofen needs this lantern filled up with energy. It somehow doesn't have enough yet. And before, Maxis was saying that Victis needed to take the lantern, so I guess Maxis was right in that this lantern was definitely useful for Richtofen. But the truth is, at least judging by the next part of this step, is that Maxis needs this lantern as well. And he tells Victis this shortly after they pick up the lantern.
The lantern is a vessel for energy, the energy contained within all matter. You must find a method to manipulate the power of the undead. Their energy may provide vital fuel for the lantern.
Maxis says that they must find a method to manipulate the power of the undead, and that their energy will provide vital fuel for the lantern.
Lest you face corruption from the errant energy, you may need help from a soul already bound to this realm.
But he also says, lest you face corruption from the errant energy, you may need to find help from a soul already bound to this realm. And it seems that the wiki thinks this is Arthur. Although it is one of the options, for Maxis, Victis has to charge up this lamp with normal zombies. But they have to be killed by one of the traps that perhaps Arthur could make for them, a nuke power-up, or Arthur himself. While for Richtofen, this lantern needs to be charged up by the witch's souls. A much more daunting task, for sure. As the one for the Maxis side is really much easier to accomplish. And as we begin to fill up this lantern, we have a little indicator that we're doing the right thing. This little noise every time a zombie dies. And it keeps getting higher and higher in pitch until it eventually goes away. And now here on the roof of the Gunsmith, there's a symbol here that looks definitely like the lantern, and Victis can place it down. Upon doing so, reveals a cipher. This is called a tic-tac-toe cipher, and it reveals the name of 3 signs that are needed for the next step of the Easter egg. And it's definitely not obvious why these symbols are here. Perhaps since this is on top of the Gunsmith, it has something to do with Jeb. Maybe Jeb, all the way back in time, was not only told how to build a pack-a-punch, but how to set up this lantern situation so that here in the future, Victis could accomplish their goals. He could somehow be responsible for setting up this cipher, as this lantern might have been his mother's. And after Victis takes it from her, they have to put it on Jeb's roof. Not sure if that's entirely true, but it's very clear that it stores the souls of the zombies. And somehow after storing that energy, is able to use that energy to reveal this cipher, giving Victis another puzzle to solve in order to continue their journey. And I think this Jeb theory is correct. Let's have a listen to this quote here that Maxis gives us after filling up the lantern with souls.
You must ensure the lantern is safe from harm. The energy contained within is essential to illuminate the words of those who came before you. Their wisdom will show you the way.
In this transmission, Maxis says that we need to use the energy contained within the lantern to illuminate the words of those who came before you. And since it's on top of the blacksmith, my only guess is that this is Jeb. And the crazy part about this, right, is that this cipher gives you the name of signs here in the mine shaft. But back when Jeb was here in this town, it was just a normal western town in America. There was no mine shaft. So whoever those angels were that told him how to make the pack-a-punch also told him the answers to this cipher. They certainly knew ahead of time that this western town was going to be teleported underneath this mining facility. And although Jeb probably didn't know any of this, he clearly listened and put together this cipher anyway. But to make this story even more complicated, there's another quote that you get after placing the lantern on the Gunsmith.
Though they failed to complete the task, the others left clues for those who followed. Only a burst of electricity will have the brute force necessary to release the energy bound to this realm.
Maxis says once again that they failed to complete this task, but those who came before us have left us clues. Here it seems that Maxis is talking about some people that he was trying to guide along their way to do this Easter egg, and they all failed to do it, which understandably so. It's pretty difficult. But he tells us that we need a burst of electricity, and only it will have the brute force necessary to release the energy bound to this realm. And as I said before, the Richtofen side of this lantern step is very similar, but he needs it charged with the souls of the witches.
Yeah, it's all so perfect. I advise you to keep it up. Oh, keep it up. I know I am.
Something that's a little bit more difficult, but in all honesty, it's not all that hard, especially if you stay inside the double tap room. Hopefully Stulinger is smart enough to get this step done quite easily. And of course, when doing so, we get some pretty funny quotes, but at the end of fully filling up the lantern, we hear this from Richtofen.
Listen carefully, my friend. Now the lantern is full of juicy juicy. Oh! You must use its power to show you the way. So sorry, I'm being cryptic again. Basically, I'm telling you to go shine its light on stuff.
He says that the lantern is filled with ghost juiciness, which is pretty funny on its own, but on top of that, he also says that Stulinger must use its power to show him the way, and that in layman's terms, he's basically just telling him to shine its light on stuff, which is kind of funny too. And it turns out the stuff that we need to shine the light on is the same as the Maxis side. Victis needs to take the lantern on top of the Gunsmith and place it on the same symbol. And after doing so, Stulinger hears Richtofen once again.
All this talk of energy is so vague, yeah? It's best not to worry about it. Just think of the big ones. Positive and negative. North and south. Light and dark. Good and evil. Anyway, cheer up. It's all good. You just need to smear the right area with some fresh zombie blood. It's so fresh.
This quote is quite interesting. Richtofen talks about the energy here and tells Stulinger that it's best not to worry about it. But he does say, think of the big ones. Positive and negative, north and south, light and dark, good and evil. This might be a hint at the sort of energy that we're releasing here, or it could also be a hint that he's trying to say he's the good side and Maxis is the evil side. It's not super obvious here what the answer is, but it definitely makes me think there's something more going on with this lantern, and certainly with the next step here that happens after solving the cipher. And Richtofen does give us one extra tip here, saying that we need to smear the right area with some fresh zombie blood. And interestingly enough, for Richtofen and Maxis, this step is sort of the same. It's the same exact cipher, decoded the same exact way, in order to get something called a Wisp, so spawn. And in order to complete this step, Victis needs either the Bowie knife or the Gavanuckles. But the Gavanuckles are so much cooler, so we're grabbing those. And I'm not sure how Victis is able to decipher this code. I suppose perhaps Marlton is, as he is sort of the smart one of the group. But it leads them to some of these signs that we find here throughout the mine shaft. In this reimagined mod, each one of them has to be hit in order to get the Wisp to spawn. But normally, of course, only the 3 determined by the cipher need to be meleeed. But if Victis just follows this Wisp around the map as it starts flying away from them, well, they'll notice that it'll just disappear into nothing. It loses its energy, and this step of hitting these signs has to be done all over again. But as it goes by zombies, it sort of charges them. You see this sort of white glow around their arms. And as it turns out, if Victis kills these zombies near the Wisp, it keeps it energized, allowing it to make it to its destination. And as for the Wisp itself, it's sort of just a ball of electricity. At least that's what it seems like. And like many other things in the zombie storyline, is clearly powered by the zombie souls. And it seems also like Victis has to stay close to this Wisp in order to keep it alive as well. So the conditions for this Wisp to disappear is either the zombies don't charge it, or it's too far away from a member of Victis to stay charged too. Which I'm not exactly sure what that implies about it, other than obviously that it needs energy to survive. Perhaps it's almost conscious in a way, and it knows when the player isn't near it, so it just gives up and makes him restart. And I say that the Wisp is conscious. Well, there's a quote here from Maxis that says this.
Follow the Wisp. He will show you the way.
Maxis calls the Wisp he. I'm not sure who he is, but that definitely points at this Wisp being conscious. And perhaps, maybe even being a soul. A soul of Jeb? Maybe the witch herself? I have no idea. But boy, does that open up a can of worms. But eventually it'll make its way to the Gallows and start lighting up one of these lamps here. But there is a second lamp, which means we need a second Wisp. Which, right after getting this first one here, Maxis says that there's been a problem.
No! This is an unforeseen problem. The Wisp's life force has been exhausted, but further energy is required. I have to think. We need more time.
Apparently the first Wisp's life force has been exhausted, and further energy is required. And then Maxis says that he has to think, and that we need more time. And it's definitely not obvious the first time playing Buried what you need to do here. So I doubt it would be obvious for Victis either. But the key is the last part of this transmission, that we need more time, and what we really need is a time bomb. And before we figure out what to do with it, we should probably talk about the device itself. Immediately when looking at this thing, it definitely gives some old-timey vibes. Although mixed with like this crazy looking clock face and some of the metal around it as well, it definitely seems like some witchcraft that could have been made back in the Old West. And once again, it's my best guess that that is the case. Just like the Paralyzer and the Pack-a-Punch, this time bomb was most likely created by those who lived in Buried before it was teleported. Could it again be Jeb the Blacksmith? I mean, maybe. It could also have been like some clockworker in the town as well. There could be multiple people from this old western town that were working together to serve the requests of the angels that came down to them. But either way, it is a cool looking device, and whenever you plant it on the ground, it saves the state of the game. Or, I suppose for Victis, whatever time they put it down. It has this little stopwatch to go with it, which when that's clicked, it sends Victis right back to whenever they place the bomb on the ground, allowing them to travel back in time whenever they need to. I would assume this thing is powered by 115, but something important to note here is it does glow green, just like the power-ups do. Perhaps the power-ups have a similar ability to travel through time, or at the very least, there's most likely something related between the two, although I don't think there's any answers out there exactly what that is. But either way, what Victis had to do, because they had to do this before the first Wisp, was place a time bomb right next to the Gallows. And then after the first Wisp gets there, they trigger it so that they can go back in time and get a second Wisp to power it fully. Which I guess does bring up the question, what do they do if they didn't put the time bomb down? Do they just die? I think that's most likely the case. I think they failed if they hear these voice lines. If they don't already know what to do, they gotta restart the time loop. And so far, it seems, judging by the other maps, the only way for them to do that is die. But finally, after probably failing to do so quite a few times, Victis gets the second Wisp to the Gallows, charging up what seems to be our second lamp here too. So it's very clear whatever this Wisp is definitely electric in nature, but a spooky kind of electric, I suppose. Certainly a special one, and it is used to charge the Guillotine in some sort of way that'll help lead us towards our goal of charging the final polarization device. Lots of charging things to charge other things, I suppose. And after we get the second Wisp to the Gallows, and both lamps are lit up, and supposedly this has enough energy now, well, Maxis gives us another quote to tell us what to do.
Now that the structure has power, we need only to direct its energy towards the surface. There is a rudimentary control grid somewhere in this cursed place. Perhaps a remnant of its twisted past.
He tells us that we need to direct the power that the Gallows now has towards the surface, and that there's some rudimentary control grid somewhere in this cursed place. Perhaps a remnant of its twisted past. But before we go finding that switchboard for Maxis, as for the Richtofen side, the Wisp also exists, except it's a little bit different for him. Somehow this charging of the lantern in a different way has caused the Wisp to change its nature. And after doing so, the only way that Victis can even see the Wisp at all is by having Vulture's Aid, the new perk here for Buried. And I suppose it's a good time to talk about that. It allows the player to see some things through walls. There's a symbol for the mystery box location, so you can see it from across the map, as well as one for wall guns, and even the perks. And of course we know that at least the 4 original perks from World at War were all created by Group 935, on the instructions of something else that we don't know the lore about yet, and we'll get to, I think, in Black Ops 3. But either way, there's not really a reason to believe that Vulture's Aid was any different. Even though we're here in some American Western town, right? All the other perks have been following us everywhere we go, so this one could also be another elixir that was made by Group 935. I don't really know the lore here, so let me know down in the comment section if you guys know anything else. But for now, we're just gonna say that that's the case, even though it could be something like Jeb made it, just like with the Paralyzer, right? Or maybe the guy in the candy store made it. I don't really know. But either way, it seems the very nature of this Vulture's aid that allows Victis to see things through walls also allows them to see the Wisp. So somehow those two things have to at least be loosely connected. Whatever the mystery box has that gives it its magical symbol that you can see, and whatever the wall guns have to give them their magical symbol, this Wisp has to have some part of that magic. Which I suppose hints that whoever is controlling all of that stuff might have something to do with this Wisp too. And on top of all that, on the Richtofen side, this Wisp looks quite a bit different. It doesn't seem as electric as the one for the Maxis side, although, I mean, supposedly it's probably the same. It might have been charged differently, but you would think it would be the same Wisp. This time, it looks almost more soul-like, and maybe that's what this Vulture's aid is allowing us to see. While with the Maxis side, it was interacting with the physical world much more, here on the Richtofen side, perhaps this is just literally a soul. And when Stulinger finds this Wisp after hitting the last sign, Richtofen does give us a pretty interesting quote.
Maxis calls it a Wisp. It's really just a ball of life force imprisoned in this place for all eternity. It is probably best not to dwell on what it really is. It will make you so sad.
I guess the name Wisp came from Maxis, but Richtofen tells us its true nature, that it's just a ball of life force imprisoned in this place for all of eternity. And it's probably best not to dwell on what it really is. It'll make us sad, I guess, so I think this life force is a real person. Or, at the very least, was a real person. It's clearly a soul, it's clearly conscious, and Richtofen and Maxis both need it for their own means. And the actual function here of the step is also different. Instead of the Wisp just flying around the map and you have to keep it charged in order for it to get to its destination, here for Richtofen, the Wisp can teleport. Stulinger just has to go location by location and find it each time before it dissipates. But if Stulinger successfully gets this Wisp to the Gulletine, it will attach to it, and just like for the Maxis side, it needs to be charged. This time, though, it needs to be charged at the Gulletine, and it'll attach to zombies that come near it.
Get it now! I want its energy! I must have its energy!
Richtofen definitely seems like he needs its energy. And actually, maybe get the soul. Because here on the Gulletine itself, as you start charging up this Wisp, additional little white orbs start to appear. It definitely feels like these are souls that we're collecting. But after getting enough of them, Richtofen talks to Stulinger and tells him what to do.
Oh, I'm so exhausted after all that excitement. Do me a favor, will you? Be a pal and find the switch to turn it on. Okay, Samuel, I don't want you to get upset over it. But it seems that somewhere along the way, we accidentally tore a teensy-weensy hole in the fabric of time and space. Like I said, it's nothing to worry about, but you need to cross your own timeline in order to put things right. Just detonate a time bomb near the Gulletine, and everything will be hunky-dory.
It seems that we have somehow, along the way, tore a hole in the fabric of space and time, which seems like quite a problem, but Richtofen doesn't seem too phased, I guess. Tells us not to worry, right? But he also tells us that we need a switch to turn on this device, whatever device we're making here at the Gulletine. And I guess that switch is in a different timeline because Richtofen tells us that we need to cross our own timeline in order to put things right, and to detonate a time bomb near the Gulletine in order for everything to be hunky-dory. So unlike the Maxis side, where Victis sort of has to guess that they need a time bomb, here on the Richtofen side, he says it very plainly. But also, unlike the Maxis side, instead of going back in time and doing the Wisp step again, this time bomb sends them forward in time to the future.
I'm really not sure what that meant.
Welcome to your future. Now hurry and find the switch. Ironically enough, we do not have much time.
And yeah, they definitely don't have that much time, because Victis is only here in the future for a few minutes. They need to frantically run around the map and find their own dead bodies, which are just scattered around the place. And on one of them will be this switch that they need for the Gulletine. So I guess this tells the story of what happens if Victis fails in doing the Easter egg. This is some other timeline where they got this switch that they needed for the guillotine, but couldn't complete the Easter egg. Maybe they couldn't complete the Easter egg in their timeline because our timeline here. Perhaps we got the lantern and we got the Wisp, and that timeline got the switch. And I guess that timeline wasn't as important as our timeline, right? We couldn't transfer the Wisp over, so they died, and we have to go there and get the switch. Not a very difficult thing to do. Eventually Victis will find it and be sent back to normal time. But there is another interesting detail before we put this on the guillotine. If you go down while you have this switch, its model will drop on the ground, just like with any other part. And getting up close and personal with it, we can see that it's just the normal power switch. And it also has the hand attached to it. Just like we've seen before in, like, Transit, for example. It's the same exact model. There could be some interesting lore behind this. I mean, perhaps this is the switch from Transit that they've had all along or something. But it also could just be the case that Treyarch didn't change the model because they thought no one would see it. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, on the guillotine itself, when you actually place it, I don't think you can see the switch. So there wouldn't really be a point in making a new model for it, I guess. And maybe they just forgot that when you go down, well, it would just be right there for anyone to look at. Either way, though, it is really cool to think about, and to think that this could be the same power switch that they maybe took from Transit or Die Rise or something. It's very interesting. Or maybe this is that same power switch that keeps getting teleported along with us. Perhaps whoever is controlling the wall guns and all that stuff also brings forward the power switch. Still don't know, but perhaps one day we will. But anyways, after putting the switch on the guillotine and flipping it on, Stulinger hears Richtofen again.
So many puzzles, so many games. Where do they come from? Huh? Ooh, that's a ghost. Maxis does this all the time, you know. You're not the first. He will push you as far as he can, following his own ridiculous rules, only to cast you aside like used disuse. I won't do that to you, Samuel Stulinger. I like you too much. Now be a good boy and run along to the maze.
It seems that for Richtofen, Victis needs to go to the maze behind the witch's house. But in this quote, Richtofen is clearly making fun of Maxis, talking about all these games and the puzzles, where do they come from, ooh, that's a ghost, right? That Maxis does this all the time, and that Victis is not the first he's tried to do it with. Which we've already heard, actually, in the Maxis storyline. Those quotes from Maxis about those that came before us. But Richtofen tells us that he'll push us as far as he can, following these ridiculous rules, only to cast us aside like used tissues. And Richtofen assures Samuel that he won't do this to him, right before laughing and telling him to just run along to the maze, like his little servant. Definitely makes me think that something bad is going to happen to Victis, on either side here. But let's put Richtofen back on the shelf for now and go back to the Maxis side. After charging up the Gallows with the 2 Wisps, he told us that we need to find some rudimentary control grid in order to focus this power from the Gallows towards the tower above ground. Well, this control grid is found inside the witch's house. It has a lever along with 9 lamps, and they're linked to 9 bells that can be found around the map. One member of Victis needs to stay inside of the witch's house while being bombarded by them and activate the switchboard, and a light will appear, and they need to tell the other members which one it was. While the other members of Victis need to go around the map hitting the correct bells that correspond to the lights. Essentially, one row of these lights correspond to the bells in the candy store, another row to the barn, and the last one to the courtroom. And after Victis is able to figure out which bell corresponds to which light, which they have to do by communicating across the map, and thinking about that, that's obviously quite difficult. This would take them so many rounds to do, so many trips through the witch's house. Obviously, they don't have a headset. They don't have any radio communication with each other. So unlike us, the players, which get to talk through an Xbox party or Discord, they have to talk in person and figure this out on their own. But for us here in Black Ops 2 Reimagined, this step is much easier, and the order in which we use the bells doesn't actually matter. The only thing that matters is that we ring them all. And I have to imagine it was probably quite difficult for Victis to find all of these bells. I mean, there's 9 of them, but of course there really is only 3 locations with 3 bells each. But the bells themselves are very small. So I could imagine this would take Victis a lot of time to accomplish, not to mention the fact that they have to do it in the right order, and anytime they mess up, the whole thing gets reset. But it seems that somehow these bells that are located around the map, when they're pressed in the right order, according to this control grid switchboard inside the witch's house, that directs the energy from the gallows up towards the tower above. And when this is done correctly, Victis can move on to the next step, which Maxis tells us is at the fountain.
You must proceed to the fountain in order to set the final chain of events in motion.
And we'll be going to the fountain very soon, but for the Richtofen side of things, he also needs some kind of method to hone this energy that's at the Gulletine instead of the gallows towards the surface for him. And instead of going around the map and hitting these bells, which still confuses me how that somehow directs the energy, he told Stulinger that they needed to go to the maze. And when they arrive, they're greeted with some levers that have now somehow came out of nowhere and appeared on the side of these big green gates.
I'm sure it's now just a simple matter of flipping the switches in the correct order.
According to Richtofen, it's just a simple matter of flipping these switches in the correct order. And as far as I can tell, the only way that Victis will know what the correct order is by flipping switches and seeing if they start to spark. Which I imagine is probably quite difficult for Victis to do, because this maze is a really good place to die. It's really difficult to get away from the zombies here. But eventually, after doing so, Stulinger hears Richtofen say that we're inching even closer to our goal.
I'm so proud of you! We are inching ever closer to our goal. Many inches of inching. Oh, do you ever wish for something so hard that you think you're going to burst if you don't get it? Well, today all our wishes are going to come true. Just take all your hard-earned pennies along to the fountain.
And he tells us, just like with the Maxis side, that we need to go to the fountain. And this final step of the Easter egg is exactly the same for both Richtofen and Maxis. And for the final step, Victis needs to make a wish. Upon going up to this fountain here, in the center square of Buried, if you'd like to call it that, we're prompted to toss in a coin. And upon doing so, some flashes of lightning will happen, and some metal targets will start appearing around the map. Some by the candy store and courtroom, others by the mansion, and some all the way by the saloon and jail cell. And essentially, each member of Victis needs to pick a location and take down their targets, shooting them fast enough in order to get them all before any of them disappear. But each one of the targets does seem to have the same picture. Some Western guy with a red rag around his neck and a 6-shooter in his hand. Not sure if these are meant to be of someone in the storyline. I mean, perhaps this is Jeb Brown the blacksmith, right? I guess we don't really know. But either way, this definitely seems like a test of will, forcing Victis to do one final challenge. This step for both Victis as well as me right now is quite difficult to do. Normally, of course, for the step, you need 4 players in order to accomplish it, as one player needs to take on each area of the map and take out all their targets. But here in Black Ops 2 Reimagined, it is made a little bit easier, and all I have to do is take out 20 of them. But even though that's the case, it still is pretty difficult. But after doing so, Victis gets all the perks, as a reward once again.
What exactly did I do?
But this is not the end of Victis' journey. There is one final step to complete. Inside the courthouse, there is this box here with 3 lamps on it. And as you can see here, we have 3 red lights. And each one of them corresponds to an Easter egg for the Maxis side. If there were blue ones here, they would correspond to the Richtofen side. This right here is our first super Easter egg, as the zombies community calls it. If Victis has done each one of the Easter eggs for their respective side, which I suppose for now we'll take Maxis as the example since that's what we have here, each one of those polarization devices is activated for him. And that, essentially just doing each one of the Easter eggs, is the first step of this super Easter egg. But there is one other step that Victis has been doing this entire time, and I haven't talked about it at all yet. In each one of these maps, we have a nav table. Victis has to know somehow, without any guidance, because I don't think there's any quotes about this, at least that I've found. Like, Maxis doesn't talk to them and tell them, hey, build these nav tables, and neither does Richtofen. But they need to, in all 3 maps, Transit, Die, Rise, and Buried. Find the parts, build the table, and then also find each nav card. Although, actually, quick correction here, after doing a little bit more research, I did find that there was a cut quote from Maxis that talked about these nav tables. He was supposed to say that we constructed a control mechanism, but to program the computer, we'll need to secure an application nav card. and we'll have to seek it out and then return here to activate the Spire to save mankind. And this nav card and how it works really is the final piece to the puzzle of this storyline. Because the nav card from Transit needs to be used in Die Rise, the nav card from Die Rise needs to be used in Buried, but what about the Transit table? And what about the nav card from Buried? Well, it's a loop. Just like each one of these maps is a time loop, all of the maps together is a time loop as well. The nav card from Buried needs to be used in Transit. So Victis is stuck in a massive time loop, doing these Easter eggs over and over again until they complete all of the polarization devices and they can finally finish the super Easter egg. Having all these nav tables together and the nav cards in the appropriate places in order for this box to open up and have a big red button to push.
The process has begun. Now I control the ether's energy. I can at last reach Agatha.
Ah, you fools! Why did you listen to him?
Regretfully, I must inform you that neither the Earth nor its people will survive.
Ah, I tried so hard to warn you. Don't go!
Once the gateway is open, I will finally be reunited with my dearest Samantha.
Hello? Are you forgetting something? Even if your wretched daughter is still alive, she has my body!
If you are so eager to re-enter the physical world, Richtofen, I will grant you that fish!
And we hear a dialogue between Richtofen and Maxis. Maxis tells us that the process has begun. He now can control the ether's energy, and he can at last reach Agartha. He tells us that not us, the Earth, or its people will survive, and that once the gateway is open, he will finally be reunited with his dearest Samantha. Richtofen talks back to us, telling us that he tried to warn us, and that we're fools for listening to Maxis. Which, before this, Richtofen could only talk to Stulinger, but now it seems he can talk to everyone. And at the very end, he says to Maxis that even if his wretched daughter is still alive, she is in Richtofen's body. Which is definitely true. Like, at this point, Samantha is on the moon with Ultimus. Presumably, Dempsey, Takio, and Nikolai are all fighting alongside Samantha to stay alive up there in Griffin Station. Samantha, though, being inside of Richtofen's body. After the end of the Black Ops 1 Easter egg, they switched souls.
Daddy, make him stop!
So Richtofen, funny enough, is inside of Samantha's body, that's inside of the MPD, and of course, he's been the one this entire time in Black Ops 2 that's been controlling the zombies, and has also been talking to Stulinger inside of his head. But here at the very end, Maxis says, if you're so eager to re-enter the physical world, Richtofen, I will grant you that wish. And, he definitely granted him that wish, because now Richtofen is a zombie. So not only does Richtofen not have control of the zombies anymore, I mean, all of the eyes of the zombies have turned orange. It's very obvious that Maxis is now in complete control. He's now going to destroy the Earth. But on top of all of that, Richtofen is here stuck with us as well. He himself is a zombie that you get to see randomly throughout the rounds, and he'll give you extra points if you kill him, as well as a power-up. He will be the only zombie that has blue eyes, and of course can be identified as such. And of course the Maxis side is canon, like I said before, but if Stulinger somehow did convince Victis to listen to him, or perhaps force Victis to listen to him by doing some steps on his own and forging the path ahead of them, well, there's a super Easter egg ending for that too. Again though, the crazy part about this is that Victis had to do the Richtofen side of the Easter egg on Transit, Die Rise, and Buried. But if they did all that, and Richtofen convinced Stulinger, and Stulinger convinced Victis, well, this box here in the courthouse will have 3 blue lights on it. It's the same sort of process. It opens up as you walk towards it, and there's a big red button to push.
Finally, I am in control! The ether is mine to manipulate as I wish. The moon is now my own personal plaything!
But what about Samantha? Your actions condemn my daughter's very soul to eternal damnation. Even if you do not care for her, surely you wish to return to your own body.
Not really, no. Won't I already possess the power to leave this netherworld and re-enter the physical realm once more? I can choose anybody I wish. As for you, Maxis, you will simply cease to be. Other than Toodles.
No!
Take a deep breath, Samuel. We're about to get a whole lot closer. Last I am... Oh, what's the word? Corporeal? No. Physical. Whatever. I have my very own body. I can touch. Yeah. I can feel. I can smell. Oh, maybe that's not such a good thing. What is that stink?
In this final conversation between Richtofen and Maxis, we get to learn the true goals of Richtofen. He says immediately, right off the bat, that he is finally in control, and that the ether is now his to manipulate any way he wishes, and the earth, and I guess the physical realm in general, is his own little plaything. It seems that all along, ultimate power is what Richtofen wanted, which makes complete sense. I mean, from his background, everything that we know about him, he's always been about power. And Maxis is a little bit more rational, and it seems this whole time he's just been trying to get back to his daughter. But of course, in this alternate timeline where Richtofen wins, as he states here as well, Maxis gets deleted. Richtofen tried to do this once already on Moon, but it seems that he somehow failed, and some remnant part of Maxis was able to escape. But here, finally, at the end of Buried, Richtofen would have been able to completely delete Maxis. And on top of that, Richtofen doesn't seem to be interested in getting back to his body. Of course, currently, Samantha is in that body, but instead of going through the hassle, I guess, of getting that back and, I don't know, needing to deal with Samantha, I suppose, and I guess the rest of Ultimus as well, who are up there with her, he instead decides to go into Samuel's body and become one with Stulinger. But it seems that something didn't quite go right.
No, wait. Something's wrong. I'm struggling to control my movements. Okay, maybe I just need some practice.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, Samuel, you're still here? Okay. This is a little awkward. It's really not that different to how things were before, Sammy. We get to talk to each other, play games, have fun. It's really quite exciting. You'll like the fact that we're going to be eating more salad. That doesn't come in a bowl, but I do understand, Sammy. Just carry on as normal, and I'll try to leave you alone for a while.
Somehow, even though Richtofen has complete control over the ether, or at least he thinks he does, he isn't able to control Stulinger completely. Stulinger is still there. And now Richtofen is in the physical world, right? He can feel and smell, judging by these quotes, but he doesn't have control over Stulinger's body. Perhaps when Stulinger dies, though, he would. I mean, maybe he could, switch bodies now, though, considering he controls the ether. Or there would be an entire another map if this was canon, and it would have its own Easter egg where Richtofen tries to convince the group that they need to listen to him, even though Stulinger is controlling the body still, which would make things really awkward, I suppose, and I doubt they would want to listen to him. I'm not sure what the result actually is of this timeline. It's pretty weird to think about. But either way, in conclusion, Richtofen always wanted power. He wanted complete control of the universe, and clearly didn't care about Samuel Stulinger at all, even though he lied to him earlier and said that he did. He was essentially going to delete his consciousness in some sort of way and take control of his body. And I would say, thankfully, this isn't canon for Stulinger, but the Maxis side doesn't seem any better, because the conclusion there is that the Earth is destroyed, and everyone on it is dead, including Richtofen, who was made a zombie, and most likely including Victis as well. Although, we will see some Victis stuff later on in the zombie storyline, so I guess they're not completely done yet. For now, it would be safe to assume, though, that Victis is dead, along with everyone else. And as Maxis said, he can now make his way to Agartha, and finally be reunited with Samantha. And that was the events of Buried. On December 31st, 2035, Victis arrived at an old western town, now located beneath a mining facility in Angola. They discovered Arthur in a jail cell, and he assisted them on their journey. The voices of Maxis and Richtofen returned, and they activated the final polarization device in Maxis' favor. But now corrupted by the Dark Ether, he reveals his true intentions to Victis, and punishes Richtofen by trapping his soul in a zombie. Drawn to Agartha by her father, Samantha witnesses the evil that has corrupted him. And when a rift opens in a dimension called Dimension 63 in 1918, she reaches out to that timeline's Maxis for help. Which, of course, for the next map, Origins, here in Black Ops 2 and its Easter egg, well, it's related very closely with Agartha and Samantha. And we'll be getting to that in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, consider leaving a like down below. It helps me out a ton, and of course, make sure to subscribe so you can come back for more, because there certainly is plenty more lore to learn. And if you want to watch more of my content, you can click one of the videos on your screen right now, but if not, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay awesome, and peace out.